quotes. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Wassalatu wassalamu ala rasulih al-Kareem. Today's talk on the Crusades. In Arabic, al-Hurub al-Salibiyya. The Crusades War, in Arabic. The confrontation between Muslim and Christians is as old as the Battle of Mu'tah in the 7th year of Islam, of Medina. Mu'tah, the 8th year, the 8th year of Mu'tah, the 8th year. Yes, the 8th year, which Khalid joined it, then the Muslims expanded into Syria, which was part of the Eastern Roman Empire, and then into North Africa. Again, it was all part of the Roman Empire's territories or colonies. Then Muslim expanded further into Europe itself, into the heartland of the Christians, and that's into Spain. And they stayed there 800 years, mostly wars. But we saw as well as science, knowledge, culture, right? But that's the story of Islam. It's not only wars. We're not like non-Muslims. In general, non-Muslims, when they go to war, they cause destruction. When Muslims will go to war, usually the places they go to, it's better off after. It's always the other way around with other cultures and religions. So Muslim had the upper hand for the next 300-400 years. And then Muslims weakened. From the year 250 onwards, started getting weak for two reasons. And we mentioned them before. And that is the Ismailis, really. They were the biggest Shia group. That Shia group was divided into itself, but still all Ismailis. At one time, almost occupied or controlled, not occupied, controlled the whole Muslim world, really. Different groups, but of all Ismaili trend. Remember, the Shia were divided into many groups. The Ithna Ashar, the 12ers that they rule Iran now, this is one of the last ones, not the one of the original ones, because they only discovered that there were 12 imams after the 11th imam did not have an offspring. Then they said, well, number 12 must be somewhere and he'll come back. Anyway, the Ismailis was the strongest. The Ismailis were one part of the problem, or half of the problem, and Sufism was another part. That's the truth, because they start deviating into philosophies and into the nature of Allah instead of the nature of mankind. That's what we are supposed to do, right? Anyway, although the damage of the Sufi wasn't as bad as the damage of the Shias. Let's look at some slides. I've prepared quite a few slides here. Can you see the screen? Can you see the slides? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah. Right. This is the Muslim world here. Okay. As you can see, there are three different colors of boundaries. One is red, right, which is North Africa from Egypt up to Morocco. And one is black near Mecca and Medina and Arabia here, yeah? And one is blue, that's the rest of the Muslim world, from Baghdad to China. The one in the red here was controlled by a group called the Fatimites. The Fatimites means Al-Fatimiyun. They call themselves Al-Fatimiyun, that means the children of Fatima radiallahu anha. And the liars, they had nothing to do with the children of Fatima or Fatima herself. Those people, they call themselves Fatimites as well as Ismailis, and the Muslims call them Ubaidis. Why? The founder of this group there's a man called Ubaidullah, I don't know, Ubaidullah something, suddenly appeared in North Africa, in Tunisia, in the year about 350 Hijri, and he claimed that he was the great descendant of Ismail. Ismail, the son of Muhammad of Ja'far al-Sadiq. Just to remind you here, if you remember, this is the tree of the 12 Imams. Do you see them, isn't it? Yeah? Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, I'll just try to make it larger if I can. Anyway, what we have Ali radiallahu anh, then Hassan, Hussein, and then Ali Zain al-Abidin, and then Muhammad al-Baqir, then Ja'far al-Sadiq. Ja'far al-Sadiq had many sons, 6 or 7 sons. The eldest was Ismail, that was supposed to be the Imam after him. We said that from Muhammad al-Baqir onwards, they start calling themselves Imam. But neither Ali ibn Abi Talib or Hassan or Hussein or Ali Zain al-Abidin, the son of Hussein, called themselves Imam. But Muhammad al-Baqir, they called him Imam, he liked it and he kept it. And then he said he appointed his son, Ja'far al-Sadiq, and that's where the Ja'fari Mazhab, Ja'fari and 12ers are the same. But they were called Ja'fari before because they did not know they're going to end up in having 11 Imams and one hidden one. Anyway, so he appointed his son Ismail as Imam after him. But Ismail died in his lifetime. Then he appointed Abdullah. Before Ismail died in his father's time, in his father's lifetime. Then he appointed Abdullah. Abdullah outlived his father. But embarrassingly, Abdullah lived only for 70 days after his father. So Shia were so embarrassed, they said, no, they meant Musa al-Qadim, next one. And he said, no, I'm not the Imam. It's my brothers who died. He said, no, it's you. They forced him and he became the Imam. Now this Ismail here, some people said, no, the Imams could not have made mistake. So Ismail must be somewhere around. So they split the Shia into where is Ismail? His father buried him. And people went to his funeral. Said, no. Some said, no, he was God himself, believe me, right? And the Ismailis still now believe that he was God. Some believe that, no, he wasn't God, he was the Mahdi. And some believe, no, he wasn't God, he wasn't the Mahdi, but he was divine. He had some divine attributes. And they became the strongest and the biggest Shia group for the next 300-400 years. Right, those Ismailis. While the other groups, we mentioned some of them last time, like the Zaydis, etc., were much smaller compared to the Ismailis. But then the number of the Shia followers of one mazhab or another were fluctuating. Till now, the 12ers are the biggest of the group. But anyway, coming back to the Ismailis, this man who here, he claimed he was the descendant of Ismail. What's his name? Ubaidullah. Muslims digged out his root, they found that he was a Jew. So they call him Ubaidi because he's Ubaidi. His name is Ubaid. He managed to control North Africa, really, for about 100 years. Then he moved to Egypt and he was expelled from North Africa. You remember the two groups that helped the Muslims in Spain? One is called Al-Muwahhidun and one called Al-Murabitun and Al-Muwahhidun, between the year 400 and 500 Hijri. Those two people, two groups, were very strong Sunnis. They expelled all the Ismailis from North Africa. The Ismailis ended up in Egypt and they stayed there for the next 200 years. And they even controlled Damascus and Jerusalem for 100 years. And they've done a lot of damage, really a lot of damage to the Muslims there. I mean, they were engraving on the mosque's walls and the mosque doors insults of Aisha, Abu Bakr and Umar, and you have to curse them after Jum'ah. They killed many Muslim scholars, right? At the same time, what these Ismailis were here, another group of Ismaili, another different than those, but they all claim to belong to Ismail, called the Buwayhiyin. who controlled Baghdad and the whole Khilafah. That Khilafah did not control West Africa, North Africa, but all of Asia here, the Muslims in Asia up to China. So they controlled the Khalifa. He was very weak. Again, took 100 years to get rid of them. We'll come to how they got rid of them by a Turkish Muslim called Ertuğrul. It's just like, oh, Toghrul. Ertuğrul is that Turkish series now. He was the grandfather of Uthman, the founder of the Uthmani Empire. And that's Ertuğrul.
Father of Uthman.
Father, but he's not the same Toghrul. That's different. That's Ertuğrul. That's Toghrul about 200 years before him.
Oh, right.
Okay, it's different. That's Toghrul. The other one is Ertuğrul. That's the father of Uthman. Yes, but this is so Ertuğrul suddenly came to the scene. The Khalifa in Baghdad sought his help. He brought his forces and got rid of the Buwayhis once and for all, and controlled. We'll see now how much he's controlled really. He got rid of them, and then the Khilafah and this area became Sunnis again. The third group are the Qurmuts. They only lasted for 70 years. They were savages. They're the ones who used to attack Hajjis, the ones who destroyed Mecca and Kaaba and killed thousands of Hajjis, and even they stole and broke the Black Stone. Those were defeated after by the other Fatimids actually, and okay, and then so now we are coming to nearly to the year 1000 AD. AD it's not after death, the Christian era. It's Anno Domini. Anno Domini means after the birth of Jesus, and BC before the birth of Jesus, before Christ. And so about the year 1000, they stayed there till that time, even a bit more, 1070 exactly. So this Toghrul, he was from a Turkish group called the Seljuk. Let's talk about the Seljuk because they're going to be very important for the next 200 years. The Seljuk are part of the Turkish tribes. Most of Central Asia here, from Turkey now, but not including Turkey, from east of Turkey to the Chinese border, is inhabited by Turkish tribes that constitute now the 5 Turkish republics: Azerbaijan, Turkmenistan, Kazakhstan, Uzbekistan, and Kyrgyzstan. So all those people up to the east of them, to the southeast is China, and to the northeast is Mongolia. So they're very close to the Mongols. Those people, the Turkish here, the Muslims occupied or spread Islam to their territory during the time from Uthman onwards. Then from Uthman, and then the Umayyads, who, you remember, the Hajjaj was sending one army after the other. And actually, although they were very hard, very stubborn fighters, but as soon as they lost the war with Muslims, all of them almost entered into Islam. So they were good-hearted people. They just, when they found Islam is good, I mean, from them is Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim and most of the people of the writer of the Hadith, Abu Dawood and Nisa'i, Tirmidhi, they all from those areas, right? They all entered into Islam. Initially, they were Sunnis, most of them. But with the effect of the Buwayhis, some of them became Shias, right? This Toghrul, when he died, then I think his son came, and his name was Alp Arsalan. Alp Arsalan was one of the most outstanding Turkish men ever. Alp Arsalan had all this here, like an empire here, all this under his control. And then he started going westwards towards Turkey now. Turkey used to be called, Turkey, it only became Turkey because the Turkish lived on it. There were no Turkish in it. It used to be called Asia Minor, right? This Turkey used to be Ocean. So he moved towards Asia Minor and started taking territories from the Romans. The Eastern Roman Empire was called the Byzantines, to distinguish between the Western Roman Empire. So start taking territories from them as well as fighting them. One of the battles that he wasn't ready for, the Armenians and the Emperor, what's his name? What is it? Romanus the Fourth prepared very big army from 200,000 men, of 200,000 fighters, to get rid of this Arsalan who was expanding rapidly in this Asia Minor. Arsalan had 20,000 men. He held a conference or a consultation with his men to fight or not to fight an empire, 200,000 against them, lightly armed. They decided to fight. And believe it or not, they won the war and they captured the emperor himself. And they killed thousands of his men and the Armenians. The emperor was so embarrassed, he freed himself for $1 million. I don't know what's $1 million, call it £1 million at the time. And freed all the Muslim prisoners that he had there. Alp Arslan died a year after that, or 1 or 2 years after that. Then his son Malik Shah took over. Then we'll come to this after what happened. Now we're getting closer to the war with the Crusades. Before going to the war in the Crusades, let's look at Europe before that, at that time. So the Muslim world at that time was weakened by the Shia's presence, right? And where there's no Shias, like North Africa, although they got rid of Shias, but they were small states fighting each other. Every now and then there's the same Spain, Muslims, small states fighting each other, because the central government or Khilafah was very weak. So the whole country was weak. The whole Islamic world was weak. In about 1088 AD, a Christian man called himself Peter the Hermit. He visited Jerusalem. At that time, Jerusalem was under the control of the Fatimites, so Syria. He visited Syria, or visited Jerusalem. They call it Hajj to them, pilgrimage. He went there, and then he came back spreading news that Christians are not treated well in the Holy Land, which is not true. All the Fatimites were not too bad with the Christians. They're only bad with the Sunnis. No, he spread the news that we have to liberate the land, the Holy Land. He went back, he was French, but he went and met the Pope in Rome. The Pope was called at the time Urban II. He met him and explained to him, gave him a report about the situation of the cross, the Holy Cross, and the churches in Jerusalem, etc. So they both agreed to start a campaign to liberate the Holy Land from the infidels, the Muslims. At the time, Europe was, believe it or not, very poor area, all of it. There was no civilizations in most of Europe. There was no cultivation of the land. Because of the rain, it was mostly forest. There were people there very poor. They had the feud system, or the feudal system, where landlords control huge lands and they take taxes from the peasants who work in the land, keep some of the taxes and give the rest of it to the local king. That's the whole of Europe like this. And the king keeps some of the taxes and keep the rest, give it to the Pope. The Pope had absolute power all over Europe. Even the kings, the emperors were afraid of him. There was an emperor called Henry V, not in England, in Germany, who had a disagreement with the Pope, and the Pope excommunicated him. That means nobody's allowed to talk to him. This man had to walk from Germany to Rome, walking barefooted, and stayed few days at the door of the Pope. And then the Pope allowed him to come in, and then kissed his hand and his feet, and the Pope pardoned him. That's how powerful was the Pope. Right? And still, we brought with him a lot of cash. The feudal system was a horrible system as well. In a way, to keep the land intact, only the eldest son would inherit it, because they said if we divide it between the brothers and the brothers give it to their grandchildren, etc., the land will become very useless and small. So there was here the princes, the kings, the peasants. Nobody is happy about the situation there. So when this idea starts spreading to the Holy Land, the land of honey and milk, you could have land there. It's a very big land, no people there. Well, and this, the hermit and Urban were touring Europe and gathering people, to go to liberate the Holy Land. They had a conference, the Pope had held a conference in France, but in south of France, because he wasn't in good terms with the king there, I don't know what's his name. So in south of France, and then south of France, that conference was attended by many Christians, because they've been working on it for 2-3 years. And they agreed to invade the Holy Land in the year 1098. That was 1097. So in about 6-7 months after, that was in December. And so in December 1097, they said we will start the campaign, and we'll start from Rome and go to the Middle East. Now, a lot of people, all those poor people, who had no hope in life there. Europe is cold. Most of them were peasants. And they said even the rich people there, they know that they're only rich for one generation, because the eldest brother get everything and the rest get nothing. And they become poor with the time. So plus now the rich, even the landlords, they thought, all right, we're going to have more land there. We're going to have, and it's an opportunity, just like when they went to America as well, the same thing. They just went there, so it was an empty land. So the whole Europeans now, everyone has got a reason to get out of Europe, really. Just like now when people try to get out of their poor countries, it was the other way around. So they started the journey without any organization. This Peter the Hermit, he used to tour Europe on a lame donkey and on dirty clothes. I don't know. At that time, it was very impressive to have dirty clothes and poor clothes, and to call yourself, believe it or not, they have the word Sufi. That means he is devoted to the church, right? I mean, we have to wash 5 times at least a day. Some of those European Sufis, nothing to do with Islam, used to pride himself that he hasn't had a bath for 2 years. No, 20 years, honestly. Some of them wrote in a book, he hasn't had a bath for 20 years. The longer it is, the higher the status you are. Anyway, so they started now marching. This Peter the Hermit, he saw such a positive response, he started the journey through Europe and took with him something, tens of thousands, and it was snowballing, increasing the number, increasing till they reached Constantinople, about 200 to 300,000 people there. On their way, by the way, they were not civilized people. Those guys on their way, they thought, right, they need food, they need supplies, don't they? They need animals to carry them, etc. So they were attacking Christian cities and villages and pillaging them, destroying them, attacking the people badly. The king of Hungary, or emperor at the time, was so disappointed with them, he fought them off, killed thousands of them, and they ran away from him. They came to now to the Eastern Roman Empire, to Istanbul now, Constantinople it used to be called. They went there, they were welcome. The Pope was expecting them, because there was correspondence between the two popes, the emperor and the Pope of Rome, that we could unite together and liberate the Holy Land from the infidels. That's what they used to call the Muslims. First, he welcomed them, but when he found them, they were so savage, so filthy, doing a lot of damage, stealing, killing people, he kicked them out of Istanbul, all of them, and sent them to the other side, which is the Asian side of Turkey now. They marched now towards Jerusalem. That's what they thought. This is a map of their march, right? Okay, they start marching. At that time, this is Asia Minor area, which is Turkey. As I said, what was called Turkey after was controlled by a man who came after Alp Arslan called Kulj Beg. This Kulj was a strong man, not very religious, not as good as Alp Arslan, but he was a strong man. When he saw all these people coming and attacking Muslim villages and destroying them and attacking women and children and enslaving them, stealing their chicken, their animals, he enticed them to come to a field, a big field, and slaughtered most of them, killed something like 90% of them. A few months after, the proper armies arrived from Europe. 4 armies from France and 1 army from Italy. But these are proper armies now. Those armies landed again in Constantinople, but they were more disciplined in the regular army, plus they had logistics with them, supplies, etc. They were not savage like the other ones. Again, they were allowed by the Byzantine leaders to cross over. They crossed over and they made their way. The Muslims, they couldn't stop them. They were something like 300,000 of them. No, the armies, yeah, about 200,000, 300,000, similar to the number of the mobs that came. But almost very few people survived from them. And the Muslims could not stop them. As I said, they were not united, etc. And they made their way and they started going down all the way. And the first place they came to was called Antakya or Antioch. All right, that's the first place they came to, is here, north of Turkey, north of Syria now, south. Now, Antioch at the time was controlled by the Muslims, by the Turkish Muslims. And there were many Christians in it as well, as a minority, Armenians and others. But Antioch was as fortified as Istanbul. They could not breach it. It was on a hill, well fortified, and those the tens of thousands, so many thousands of them, of these crusades, and it was well stocked up. They couldn't, and it was near to the sea, so they couldn't really till for about. But the supplies were getting less and less. And the Muslim decided they start thinking now of surrendering because they couldn't take it anymore. Then some help came to the 2 people or 2 sources offered help to these crusades. One was the Byzantine leader. He told them, if I help you, actually they approached him. This is, if I help you, you give me the town for me, not for you. They agreed because there actually there was many fights and they lost thousands of men, but they were still there. The other help came from the Fatimid Khalifa in Cairo. He sent them a message. It says they were controlling Syria at the time. He could see that those people are coming there and coming in numbers, and he couldn't handle them. So he said to them, we will not fight you as long as you keep for us Damascus and Jerusalem, and you take the rest. They agreed, but actually they came for Jerusalem, but they agreed because they needed help. They've agreed. As I said, Muslim supplies were getting less and less, so they had negotiation, and they've agreed with the Crusades that they let them go out safely and go to other Muslim areas. As soon as they opened the gates, the Crusades entered there and started slaughtering the Muslims, and almost left nobody alive there. Right? I don't know how many tens of thousands they killed, they enslaved, they attacked the women, took the children as slaves, and they sold them. They killed all the men there. And from now on, that was their way that they dealt with Muslims. Whenever they surrounded them, if they overcome them, they'll kill them. If they make a treaty with them, they'll still kill them. They've done these type of massacres, anything between 50 to 100 times. I can't count them. I couldn't record them. Really. So many of them. Some of them, the Crusades now, once, right? Some of them, where they went a bit further to the east here, bit further to the east. No, there's another picture here. Yeah, okay. Yes, here. Some of them went to the east here, not to Aleppo. This is Aleppo. Aleppo is the second biggest city in Syria. North of Aleppo, about 200 kilometers or less away from Aleppo, there was a very powerful castle as well, city, a fortified city, not castle, fortified city, surrounded by many castles as well, called Al-Raha, in English, Edessa. Again, it was a mixture of Muslims and Christians, because that area originally Christian, because the Christians have been there for the past 1,000 years. Armenians and non-Armenians and Muslims there, and they couldn't breach it this time. They've tried for 2-3 months, they couldn't, till the Christians inside decided to betray the Muslims who treated them well for hundreds of years. They betrayed, and they opened the gates for the Christians. The Christians went inside, and again the same treaty as Antioch, killed the Muslim there, and they didn't kill the Christian now, but they did later. The Christian, no, they were not Arabs. I don't know, the Armenians and Jacobians. I don't know what the Jacobians. Jacobians, probably one of the not race, a religion there to do with Jacob. Anyway, and in this place here called Edessa, they made the first state or county, and one of the leaders there, then called Baldwin, he became the principal of it, or the king of it. In Al-Raha, that's Al-Raha called. In Antioch, again, they made another, let me see the names of those people there. They made another state there, and there was a German, not German, Italian king among them called Bohemond. He was happy just to be in charge of that place, and he became again made this his kingdom of Antioch, and that gave both of them gave Muslims a lot of trouble, really, all of them. Then they start descending down all the way to Jerusalem. From Antioch to Jerusalem, 600 kilometers. Now they are going through Syrian and Palestinian and Lebanese cities. The Muslims heard of how savage these people were, and they were disunited. But at that time, almost every town was a state by itself. Every town was an enemy of the next town, either controlled by Arabs or Turkish, by Fatimites or Sunnis. Muslims were so disunited. This is what probably Dr. Salim means about little sheikhs. That was at that time. And a little bit of it this time as well. There is some truth in it nowadays. But anyway, they were at loggerhead with each other. Every town, as I said, was independent. But Damascus in particular and Jerusalem was ruled by the Fatimites. They went down, and so those people, poor people again, they were receiving the Christians with expensive presents, with a lot of money, supplying them with food and livestock, etc., just to let them pass without harming them. Some they didn't, some they did, right? But they kept going till they reached Jerusalem in the year 1099 AD, and in Jerusalem there were a population of 70,000 Muslims, as well as it has its own walls as well, the city of Jerusalem. And there was, again, the contingency or the army of the Fatimas defending it. The Muslims managed to fend off the Christians for 40 days only. But after 40 days, they made towers, wooden towers, so they can scale the walls. The Muslim burned one wall, and the but the Christians managed to open, to scale the wall, enter the city, open the gates, and everybody rushed in. And with a lot of respect and appreciation, all the Fatimid soldiers were escorted out safely. Not single one of them was harmed and didn't even fight. Throughout the 40 days, they stayed in one palace in Jerusalem, and then they were escorted by the Crusades. So probably it was agreement between them somehow. This is the second agreement. The first one for Antioch, and this is the second one. And they escorted them to the seaside, to Ascalon. It was controlled by them, a city here next to Gaza, where they could be transported to Egypt. They established now the third kingdom, right? In Jerusalem, they call it kingdom. After a lot of argument, they've agreed that the French man called Godfrey will become the king of Jerusalem. And Jerusalem wasn't really Jerusalem only. If you look at the white color here, what you see here is almost all of Palestine plus half of Jordan up to Aqaba. They call it that's what's his kingdom. Just like Israeli settlement now. They call it settlement, but they are probably as big as in New York, right? Same attitude. They call it small settlement, just not for people not to notice their crime. But anyway, so that's how. And this Godfrey controlled. I said he became the king there. He was French. His brother Baldwin, he came with his brother. He was the king of Edessa, and Bohemond, the Italian, was the king of Antioch. Now the Christians stayed there. They were happy. The news reached Europe. Thanks God, Urban II died a week after, but he did not hear the news because the news takes more than a week. So he never heard the good news that they occupied Jerusalem. Right? He was waiting, and then he died. Right? In the day of judgment, he will know, but it won't be good news then. Now the news came that the Christians did so well, right? More Europeans wanted to come and take their share of the cake. More Europeans. Suddenly, another mob of 250,000 from all over Europe. Now the Holy Land is theirs. That's what they think. They made their way again to Palestine. The same people, again, they only had a few hundred soldiers. Again, the king of the Byzantines, he let them quickly cross over, and they went to Asia Minor again, what you call Asia Minor, which is Turkey now. They went there, right? They went there. Somehow they decided to go, instead of going southeast, they decided to go northeast. I don't know why. They started to go northeast. Here they are here. Then go, that's the first crusade. The second, northeast. So this Kulj Arsalan, not Alb Arsalan, Kulj Arsalan, the leader there at the time, what he did, he enticed them. He gave them the impression that he had only few forces, few army with him, with a small fight, that he and his soldiers ran away from them. They followed them blindly. They kept following. He trapped them to an area where he already prepared it, no water, no food. He got rid of all the water wells. He burned all the fields. So they found themselves like a desert, in a barren land, walking for miles and miles, getting tired, thirsty. When he knew they were absolutely tired and thirsty, he attacked them. Out of the 300,000 or 250,000, they say about 10% of them were survived. Few weeks after, again, the proper soldiers came. 60,000 from France and 15,000, I think, from Germany. They came, but at different times. First, the 15,000 came, 15,000 soldiers. They came and they were again followed the same route of the previous people, because the communication was not available at the time. Again, that guy, Kulj Arsalan, did the same thing with them. It was into the same area, and out of the 15,000, only 6 men survived. Then 60,000 arrived from France, the soldiers. It happened within 1 year. That was in the year 1104. That means 5 years after the occupation of Jerusalem. So the three armies were destroyed. That destruction of those three, the mobs and the two armies, taught the Europeans a very valuable lesson, that we better not fight the Turks. There were four more crusade campaigns. None of them went through Turkey anymore. They would go there, either by the seaside, from the sea, or on the coastline. All the campaigns after that, they avoided. So that area now, what we call Turkey, was no-go land for the Crusades, to come after. I think I've got some map for the Crusades after. I don't know where is it? No, sorry, I thought I have it. Anyway, now after those victories, actually the Muslims, for the first time, they smell victory after hundreds of years. There hasn't been any victory anywhere, neither in North Africa nor in the East. The Muslims morals were raised a lot. They were so happy that at last, subhanAllah, that we can, if we united, if we go to jihad, we can get rid of these people. So now Muslims start thinking of this, right? Thinking how to get rid of those people, but they have to overcome very big obstacle, and that was their disunity, right? Going back to Al-Arsalan, the man who has defeated the Romans and the Armenians, 200,000. He did them with 20,000 of his men. 2 years after he defeated them, that was 465 Hijri or 1063 AD. 2 years after he died. No, the natural death, he was killed. He was died. Then he left his son to rule. His son was called Malik Shah. Very good man, not as strong as his father, but very good man. That good man had a minister, an advisor called Nizam al-Mulk. Nizam al-Mulk was an outstanding man in the Islamic history. Nizam al-Mulk realized what damage the Shia have done to the Muslim world. And now he knows that the Sunni Turks, control most of the Muslim world now. Well, the Asian side of it anyway. And they were expanding into now, so they start expanding into Iran, back to Iraq. I mean, after Arsalan, they start expanding really. Okay, all the way here, even to Arabia. So what he did, he established the first thing probably in human history, and that is schools, like what we know the schools of today. Before, the schools were in the mosques, or for the scholars in the libraries, as we heard from, in Spain, or in Spain actually established universities, not schools. We said in Spain, the Muslims started making now the places of learning next to the mosque, not inside the mosque. At that time, Harun Rashid and his son Al-Ma'mun, who were interested in spreading knowledge, etc., they were into libraries and encouraging scholars. At that time, there's a saying, I don't know how true it is, that whoever writes a book will take its weight in gold. Plus, whoever wants to write a book, he will have a servant, a salary, and all his expenses. But then, I said, the Buwayhi, who took over the Khilafah for 200 years in Iraq, they destroyed all the civilization there. They destroyed the books, etc., and they spread their mazhab. This Nizam al-Mulk, now, what he did the opposite. He started spreading Muslim schools, and he would pay the students salary to come and learn. Although he was a Hanafi man, but whenever he went to a Shafi'i or other Sunni mazhab, he would establish school for them. He wasn't sectarian at all. Actually, Sunnis have never been sectarian towards each other. Never, unless from some fools. But in general, there is no one who just says that Shafi'is are better than Hanafis or the Hanbalis. We didn't have this. But anyway, this Nizam al-Mulk starts spreading schools and schools and schools, right? And throughout their areas of domain, which is the Khilafah of Baghdad, etc., which is the Khilafah in Baghdad, but controlled most of the Muslim world. And a lot of scholars came out from that, and knowledge now started flourishing again in the Muslim world. After Mulk Shah, Mulk Shah, the son of Arsalan, Alp Arsalan, he died. Then his son took over, and his son, Mulk Shah in particular, had a very good army officer, very loyal, very courageous man. What's his name? Very strange Turkish name. Let me see, what's his name? I forgot his name. His name is important, to be honest. So I have to know where it is in my papers. Give me a second. Yes, Ag Sungur, right? This Mulk Shah, he had one army. Ag Sungur was a Turkish, but not Seljuk. As the Seljuk are different tribes. Ag Sungur, he made him, he noticed him, he noticed his courage, his loyalty, his piety. So he kept him, promoting him till he became the governor of Al-Mosul and then Halab. Then he became the governor of Halab, the second biggest city in Syria. And then this poor guy, this good man, he was assassinated, I think, by the Shia, the assassins, and left a young son, 10 years old, called Nuruddin Az-Zinki. So this Ag Sungur was a Zinki. Zinki is another tribe of the Turkish, not the Seljuk that Alp Arsalan or his son Mulk Shah is from. So this young man, 10 years old, a boy, actually 10 boy, was taking care of the king, and then the king died. Then his brother or his son took care of him. They groomed him to be a great military commander. This man, called, what's his name? Imad al-Din al-Zinki, not Nur, Imad al-Din al-Zinki. Imad al-Din al-Zinki, when he grew up, he became very religious, very knowledgeable. I mean, and very loyal to his masters. They've noticed this. They gave him free hand in Halab. They put him first in Mosul. Mosul is north of Baghdad, and Halab is north of Damascus. They put him in Mosul as a governor. They gave him free hand. What he did for the next 18 years, he was uniting Muslim towns and cities even by force. He knew to fight the Christians, you cannot fight them disunited, because this disunity is not only disunity, they were fighting amongst each other. For the next 18 years, he was uniting Muslims. He tried very hard to unite Damascus. He couldn't with them, but then most of Syria were under his control, most of Iraq, most of Asia Minor, except few areas, and his power was growing. And while he was doing this, he had many encounters with the Crusades, not the major encounters, not the major ones. They didn't attack their major 4 states. We talk about 3 states, one in Arraha, Edessa, one in Antioch, Antakya, one in Jerusalem, and then the 4th one came few years after in Tripoli. Tripoli, not the Libyan Tripoli, the Lebanese Tripoli. So they had 4 states that controlled all the coastline and another 30 or 40 miles to the east, but they didn't go too far to the desert or into the Muslim cities. They knew that they could be outnumbered. And that's all what they wanted, Jerusalem and that area and the coast, and that's where the money is, the trade, etc. Right? So this Imad al-Din al-Zinki planned to attack. I mean, as I said, he attacked the the Christians many times and took many of their small fortifications, small castles here and there, and kept clearing the area, preparing himself for the D-Day. And that came after 18 years or 20 years, when he knew he was ready, and he decided now to head on strike the Crusades with their major forces. So he went for Ar-Raha, the first kingdom that they established, or county that they established, which is, let me see, was Ar-Raha? Yeah, here. These are the 4 Christian kingdoms, which is Jerusalem here, the county, they call it kingdom, then the county of Tripoli, then the county of Antioch, then the 4th one is Ar-Raha here. By that time, we're talking about now 50 years after the Christians came, the king here died and he was replaced by another king, then another king. Again, most of the people originally came died, but then their relatives, either their sons or their relatives, replaced them, right? So now he wanted to attack Edessa, and he knew it was well fortified and well stocked up because Muslims ruled it for 200 years. He was well aware of it. And he knew inside it, there were very powerful army there as well. I mean, it's one of the major armies of the Crusades. So with a town or a city that was fortified with a strong army, as well as well stocked up, and inside there is no Muslims anymore, only Christians and Armenians and the Crusades. So he had to get rid of the army first from inside. He had to entice them to get out from there. It's not easy. So what he did, this Imaduddin, rahimahullah, I mean, there's a lot of stories about his justice. They used to call him like Umar ibn Khattab. His justice, his simple life, praying all night, fighting all day, very pious man. There was so much peace and security in all his domain that there were no more thieves anymore. There were safety. People could walk from one town to another, from one country to another safely. And this hasn't happened for hundreds of years. He used to give his officials very high salaries, but he expected from them perfection. SubhanAllah, exactly like Umar did. Umar didn't give them high salary. That's the only difference, because he never took a high salary himself, really. But nor does this man. Actually, he lived a very simple life, this Imaduddin al-Zinki. But he made sure that none of his officials is corrupt, and they're doing their jobs, and he would punish them badly if they don't. So again, they behave themselves. Once the governors or the officials behave themselves, then the whole country is safe. So anyway, to take the army out, that's not the easiest thing, to take the army and their king out of Edessa so he could attack it. He spread the news that he is attacking another Turkish rival who was north of Edessa, right? They had few clashes between them. And he knew that this news will reach to Edessa, and it reached. So the Edessa, of course, didn't believe it 100%, the people there, but they kept an eye on him. They had scouts. So he took his army from Aleppo. This is Aleppo here. Can you see Aleppo? Yeah. He took it north and past Edessa, which was far away from him. And the people there were watching, of course, as he knew that he'd been watched by the Edessa's people, just in case he attacked him. He couldn't attack Edessa because if he surrounded, if he besieged it, then the people of Antioch will come. The people from country, all the Christians will come to help, and he couldn't take them on, all of them. So he went north, straight north, and he knew that he's been watched. And he spread another news that he split his army into 2 sections. One section will leave now, and the other section will leave in a few days with all the supplies, all the food, all the water, weapons, etc., all the logistics. So the news spread. So this king now here of Edessa was watching. So he went up north past Edessa. And then the king realized that the news were true. he wouldn't allow the second part of the army, which didn't exist, to go and join the first part and was given the supply. He took his forces, left the castle, and went south towards Aleppo. Of course, Imad ad-Din has his own scouts. So one day at night, it was cold, November, cold, 1047. That's nearly 50 years after occupation, or yeah. It was very cold, rainy. Instead of resting at night, he made a turn to the right, this Imad ad-Din, and went to Edessa. And arrived to it, and when that king there of Edessa, he went near Aleppo, he found nobody there, he went back. It was too late. His city was besieged. And he couldn't take on the army of Nur ad-Din. It was a very big army, because Nur ad-Din, for that army, really, he made it up with all the Muslims that he had problems with. All the Muslims, he got recruits from all over the Muslim areas in Syria, in Iraq, in Asia Minor. But always, he never gave the impression that he was about to attack Edessa. Anyway, he made a U-turn and came back to Edessa, and he beat that king there. I don't know what's his name. He beat him and besieged Edessa. Now that king was too coward to fight him, because he realized he's no match to him. He could fight him if he was inside the city. They besieged the city for about a month or so, and he already brought with him some people that were expert at demolishing. They give them a wooden covers that will cover them from arrows and hot water and people throwing stones on them. So they were take them long time to dig enough space for soldiers to enter. Then after a siege of about a month, they entered the town and killed all the Crusades, but not a single Christian was touched. Killed all the Crusades inside and took all their belongings there, which was a lot. And Imad ad-Din, I keep saying Nur ad-Din was his son. Imad ad-Din ordered the soldiers not to touch the local Christians there, and not to take their property. They retained their property and allow them to live there peacefully. And that was the fall of the first kingdom. And again, this is the first proper defeat of the Christians. 4/4 of their kingdom was destroyed by this thing, and the Muslims realized it could be done. To be honest, it took the Muslims another 70 years to liberate the rest of it. No, 50 years, 50 or 40 years exactly. No, to liberate Jerusalem, and to liberate Palestine another 150 years. This great man, Imad ad-Din, had one son called Nur ad-Din. And that Nur ad-Din had a friend called Salah ad-Din. So there was, and they are all as good as each other. We will find out, inshallah, next week, that we don't know who was better, Imad ad-Din or Nur ad-Din or Salah ad-Din. They were all of the caliber of Sahaba, to be honest. Right? And not ordinary Sahabas, the great Sahabas. Those three men started dismantling the Christian Crusades, one part at a time. We'll talk about the other two next week, inshallah. This Imad ad-Din, after he finished from Edessa here, that king ran away, and then he went back to his Christian. The Christian around didn't help him when he sought help. That Imad ad-Din, he had problem with another Turkish landlord somewhere here. He went to confront him. That guy or somebody, we don't know who, sent a servant, and nobody noticed. The servant went inside and slaughtered him while he was alive. And then he announced, I killed Imad ad-Din. And people called him, no, you haven't killed Imad ad-Din. You have killed all the Muslims at one go. That's what the end of Imad ad-Din, inshallah, next week, about his son Nur ad-Din and his friend Salah ad-Din al-Ayyubi. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله العظيم لي ولكم.